Welcome to Hilarity by Default's weekly BRISCO COUNTY JR review, starring the steely chin of Bruce Campbell. Socrates' job is put on the line after 4 experimental motored cycles are stolen by a gang of bandits in hope of using the high-powered vehicles to steal the orb from a heavily fortified military carriage in BRISCO COUNTY JR episode 13, Steel Horses. Oh boy, where do I begin? If there's one line that can sum up this episode, it would be,
where's my ass?
My answer? This episode. From the opening Dutch angles and engine revving, I knew we were in trouble. Steel Horses features Briscoe and Bowler during their best Henry Jones and Jr. impression, chasing villains atop motored cycle, sidecar and all. What are they after? The orb! Of course! Well, as Bowler would say,
that orb thing again, I hate this.
This is the episode that I hinted at in our introductory reviews. The one where the very idea of the coming thing explodes all over your face.
And not the good kind of way either. Let me be clear about something. Like, this explodes all over your face like your hand being possessed in a room full of dishes, and all you do is hear, "Rat the thighs! Rat 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 the thighs!" You're right. This isn't just editing by Demos. Somebody actually said that each and every time. Anyway. No, man, listen, it's funny you mentioned this as an orb episode, Demos, and for all those watching who have been following us along, understand how disappointing this episode was by this statement alone, ladies and gentlemen. The orb came on and I felt uplifted, okay? Steel Horses from the introduction, I texted Demos and I said, hate it. Demos may have thought I had actually finished viewing the episode.
I did
that. You are wrong. That was my response to the intro. Okay.
Dutch angles and engine revving. That
hate it. Okay. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that there weren't bright moments. Bowler was on screen doing a few things that were cool, and this episode had an awful lot of comment in the, well, usually the term is man versus machine, but in this case, we're going to say mare versus machine, even though it's a male horse. But details, the punchline is this. Or Mustang versus machine. How about
John Henry the Saint?
And John Henry the Saint. Yeah, not even The Rock could save this shit. Anyways, listen, folks. I mean, Bruce Campbell's amazing chin. Bruce Campbell's mechanical chin could not save this. Okay? Sorry. Anyways. Could not save this fireball. Anyway.
And mind you, we're not, I just want to preface, we don't want to be negative for negativity's sake. Right. One of the reasons we're going to be very hard on this episode is because we love
many good ones.
Yeah,
God.
We love BRISCO COUNTY JR. I love this show. I have way too much respect for this show, and this episode, I'm glad. This is one of the episodes I didn't see when I was a kid. I only saw it a few years ago when I got the DVD collection, and I saw this. I'm like, even as a kid, this episode would have turned me off. I always had a problem when they introduce something that's seemingly anachronistic. Now, I'll get to that in a little bit, so hold that thought. That's seemingly anachronistic, and the characters sit back and they're like, you mean this is a motorcycle? Oh, I call this an automobile.
A motored cycle.
Yeah, I guess you could call it that.
Oh, who cares what you call it?
And it wasn't delivered quite that bad, but it was pretty bad. No, you're right, Demos. But here's the thing, and I'm not even going to call it missed opportunity. Like, as hard as we were on the pirate episode, I believe we ended up giving it a 3, at least being average, because you could see the effort was there.
But there's something very creative in that, yeah.
Right. The tank had creative elements to it, and it wasn't just, here's a goddamn steel beast. He's in the belly of that steely beast.
Although in retrospect, it's kind of funny how this episode kind of plays in many ways as a sequel to the tank episode, even including characters that were from that episode.
Very good, Demos. Well played. I love their inclusion. Okay?
Yes.
Between the two of them, and not just because they hat, between their use, because I love the way they tied them in with the mechanical and the German translation, and they were with the scientist, which was also uplifting to see that Gomez Adams still has his women's around with him. It's great.
Doing a very interesting rendition of Good Cop, Bad Cop.
The girls have very different styles in getting what they want.
No kidding.
But John Aston's relationship with those twins, I love how they just keep hinting that there's something more going on, but they just never solidify that deal. They just leave it hanging every single time.
Phrasing. He's mechanic Hugh Hefner. That's all I'm telling you.
He does have this great line. It's like,
Well, personally, I think if they dropped the whole blacksmithing part, they'd still have quite a show.
So great.
yeah, he shows up and he gives this episode life, and then he disappears.
Those characters, Bowler, Comet, all give us quality stuff. And, because Bruce Campbell is Bruce Campbell, when the Steel Horses are not on screen, it's fun. It's what an episode should be. But what the problem is because it's the main driving plot, it's
No pun intended.
tissue that is pleasant to watch. So yeah, it's kind of a problem. And the orb was uplifting, folks. What more can I tell you?
Well, you see, you actually just hit many of the points. Let's focus on some of the positives here, because you just literally mentioned everything in one of my lists where I sat back and I'm like, okay, what are some of the great things I like about here? The German twins from No Man's Land, great. John Aston, great. And I actually did like the fact that it is a bit of a continuation of the government retrieved third orb from the previous episode in Crystal Hawks. Okay, I liked that it had some decent continuity and callbacks. Great. And I'll even add to that, unlike the tank episode, the presence of motorcycles here isn't as entirely far-fetched as you may imagine. The world of Briscoe takes place in the 1890s, at the turn of the century, at the precipice of the coming thing. The first motorcycles were actually developed in Germany in 1894. The presence of a German thug may itself be a callback to this, even though the character was in no way responsible for the invention, although he had the foresight to think, you know what, maybe I should have a helmet.
By the way, that should tell you something itself, Demos. Like, the fact that this chronologically could have legitimately happened this way because of the actual historical timing, and yet this execution was so bad, these things felt like they didn't fit. That should tell you a lot, just the fact that I put that together like that. By the way, and as a side note, I did enjoy the scenes with the government callbacks and stuff like that. I really liked this souped up wagon that they had. The breaking down the specs for that and the mission that they were imposed to deliver the orb in a certain amount of time was more impressive than anything surrounding the game's over bikes, man. It was crazy.
I agree. It's kind of funny that you think about how the tank, which is farther removed from time, actually fit better than these damn motorcycles.
Yes.
I think the biggest positive thing that I can say about Steel Horses is that it inspired me to read about motorcycles and learn a little bit more about the history of motorcycles. I didn't know that they dated back to the 1890s. That actually surprised me. Or that they came from Germany. This episode inspired me to learn some actual history, although, of course, a lot of the elements of the motorcycles here were heightened for the drama and to escalate the plot. But, hey, you know what? I actually was okay with the idea of the motorcycles.
You know what probably would have helped? Rather than having actually run by fuel and internal combustion, like
steam-powered motorcycles?
If they were steam bikes, I think that may have helped.
Briscoe has often been called a steampunk series. Even so, I mean, if the motorcycle was legitimately invented in 1894, and at this point in the series, it probably is 1894, because the first episode was 1893, if I remember correctly, I'm okay with him showing up. I think even by design, I think they were very similar. I might be wrong about this, just based on the pictures I saw on Wikipedia, but they look somewhat similar to those original motorcycles. I was actually very okay with it. Just the presentation and the delivery that just failed completely. This is yet another Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade callback with a motorcycle in the sidecar.
Right. That's 100% true.
You now see what I'm talking about, like how BRISCO County Jr. As an entire first season is kind of a Western steampunk remake of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. In some cases, the situation does improve.
It's called Blacksmith Chicks. All right.
That's it. That's all I have for positives. And I understand this is when it comes down to it. It is a comedy episode. It is going to be a little bit more out there. But the thing I've always enjoyed, and I've said this before on the show, the thing I've always enjoyed about BRISCO is that it has its tongue firmly in its cheek. This is a case of the tongue sticking out and giving you a raspberry.
Yeah, definitely. One thing I did like, there was a few extra conversations about the coming thing where let me try that again. Where Bruce Campbell, you should feel so lucky that you were mistaken for Bruce Campbell, you son of a bitch.
Hail to the king, baby.
Thoroughly appropriate. In fact, that response was smart. Anyways, so the conversation that BRISCO has with Bowler about the coming thing, I think, was one of the better moments in developing those two characters' relationship. Bottom line.
I kind of like seeing Bowler kind of expanding his mind and to kind of a creepy voyeuristic place. I know they were making a TV reference when they were looking through the two-way mirror, but I was just imagining Bowler like literally installing a see-through mirror in his wall.
Well, you see, here's the thing. They were making references to TV. I think Bowler was the one making references to porn. I'm just saying.
Hey, wait a minute. Did I just think of a coming thing?
Kind of fun, isn't it?
And now for the moment that I've been waiting for, the things I didn't like. I'll just start off by saying, I'll start right at the very beginning. The setup itself. The setup is weak and it's asinine. Socrates' job, hanging the balance for these shenanigans? Okay, that concept should have been used for something far more dire or meaningful. Think about it. Socrates' life is all about his job. Losing it could bring about a very interesting character study. We can learn more about Socrates. We can learn what is he like if he's not working for these robber barons. Instead, they make jokes about how he's being left behind on the adventure. He takes no initiative. He's like, the entire episode is about saving Socrates' job. That's what instigates the episode. They have no idea about the orb until much, much later. And he's out of the picture for practically the whole episode.
Legit. I would definitely say, because this show is known for awesome opening sequences and intros, this was easily the weakest thus far. Yeah.
Perhaps the worst aspect of this episode is that it just makes a lot of its characters look just plain dumb at times. But did you pay attention to BRISCO and Bowler's fiery escape? The specific moment that features a wildly gallivanting BRISCO performing some inane prance as he's running. It's a prance that would make Ash Williams hang his head in despair. It was way too goofy for BRISCO, in my opinion, but I think the biggest issue is like the villains themselves. The villains are terrible. And how are they dispatched? Well, they manage to capture one. The other three either betray each other for no reason or accidentally commit self-homicide. Why didn't I say suicide? Because they're too dumb to actually accomplish the task.
Yeah, the whole Thelma and Louise-esque ending for Dawkins was really stupid. I did not care for that. To your point, I think the thing that kills it the most, the gang members were terrible. I mean, Demos. Even in the episode, they make fun of the fact that this gang is dysfunctional as hell. Hell, at least the pirate was cool because it was a unique take and approach on something. The riverboat guy was cool because it was a unique take and approach or something. This was just a boring cowboy villain who wasn't as awesome as he thought he was. I mean, hell, at least Pete is comically incompetent. I mean, hey there, Brisco. You know, I mean, at least he's got some endearing quality there. Dawkins was just fireball, boring and dumb. Not a good combo.
So the villains are terrible. The heroes look stupider than they normally do. You know, I kind of like the idea of using the dynamite to put out the fire, but them getting blown through a wall 20 feet away? Come on.
Are we dead?
I don't think so.
So we alive?
Looks that way.
What the heck happened?
I blew out that fire with the dynamite.
Damn.
If they can survive this in this episode, it decreases the threat in the more legitimate, serious episodes. But I think the worst, for me personally, is, and this is a pet peeve, I despise setups that have absolutely no payoff. And this episode makes a distinct point to call out a mysterious lever on the motorcycle that should never be touched. And it isn't. Nor is it ever mentioned again.
Wait a minute. What's that thing? Don't touch that lever. I have absolutely no idea what it does.
The payoff doesn't necessarily need to be them pulling the lever in despair or accidentally, but at least pay off the mystery in some way. At the end, I'll call back, or I'll make a joke or something, at least reference it. Instead, in the finished product, it's a standalone joke that just falls flatter than the damned rubber tires that Bowler's complaining about.
That are in the sidecar, which is all this episode is in the grand scheme of this show.
And my last point, I love Comet. We have seen, up to now, Comet perform some incredible feats. He's an equine Einstein. But I draw the line at the suggestion they can keep up with a 70-mile-per-hour motorcycle.
Yeah, no, that's pretty weak. I suppose one could justify it, and the cycle in question having to operate on less than ideal terrain, but even then at day's end, it's that just, if you use that response, that really just kind of causes more problems, you know?
There are some shots of Briscoe and Bowler where they're supposedly riding the motorcycle where you can tell that they're literally just sitting there, where the background's not even moving. You can see just the background, just the plants just sitting there.
As I go and I bestow this episode with 2 comments. The only reason why it's getting 2 comments is because some of that connective tissue was so good. It's because that Bowler and Briscoe have that coming thing conversation. It's because the German chicks and Gomez did so well. It's because I got a lot of Comet in this episode. It's because Lord Bowler is still awesome. But yeah, you're not getting higher than a 2 out of me on this one.
I'm going to be a little bit harsher. For me, this is the low of the series as far as my memory goes. I haven't actually watched it straight through in a couple of years now. So for me, this is a low. And once again, we're grading this on the scale of within the series itself. So when I say I'm giving it 1 comment, I'm not saying this is the worst thing out there. Just within the series of Brisco County, for me, this is my 1 comment episode. This is an episode that features all the beloved mechanisms of Brisco County. It just dials them up to hyperbolic chaos. The coming thing, the orb, Briscoe's conversations with Comet, the tongue-in-cheek raspberries at this point. If there was ever an episode to skip, this is the one that deserves it, with a wheelie for good measure.
And while you're taking that wheelie, out of your messenger bag, you will pull out dishes and with your possessed hand go, right in the face, right in the face, right in the face.
This is a letdown. It's not catastrophic. This isn't an episode that ruins the series. This is not a jump the shark moment. This is just, let's just say, to use the seal horse analogy, let's just say that this is a speed bump on the road.
Correct. Listen, folks, people are harshest on things
that they love.
That they love and disappoint. Just the same way that I'm only going to go doom to Demos because I love him and I want to force that gag into him to make him feel miserable, okay? And just the same way, for that same reason, we're hard on this episode.
So join us every week as we cover all 27 episodes of The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. We invite you to watch along and let us know in the comments below what your thoughts are on each episode. And make sure to like and subscribe for more fun from Hilarity by Default.